Okay, so to continue, we just talked about this big debate between capitalism and socialism, or a command economy versus a market economy. And what we want to do now is look at what has the U.S. decided, and not only decided, but just evolved into. You have to remember, the world we live in today is very different than the one that our founding fathers envisioned 200 plus years ago. So the system that was created then has obviously evolved and changed as our society has evolved and changed. So what is our economic system built on? Well, mostly free market. In other words, we try to let individuals choose. So primarily a free market system. We want our markets to decide, by and large, what decisions are made. So those three questions: the who, the what's going to be produced, the how's it going to be produced, and the for whom is it going to be produced. We try to let markets decide. So that's capitalism. Remember, though, there are no pure free market economies. There are very few pure command economies, and those numbers are shrinking year by year. The debate between capitalism and pure command is over. The debate between capitalism and socialism is not. And that's where we find ourselves today. Our system is based on voluntary exchange. Remember back a couple lessons ago, the idea that if everyone chooses to trade, they're better off. Everyone who participates and willingly trades feels better off. Again, just like the kids at lunch in elementary school. I'll trade you a Twinkie for your soda. You notice, sadly, that I choose two foods that are terrible for you, but that is who I am. If we look at capitalism, then, we have four pillars that it's really built on: competition, private property, the profit motive, and a limited state. These are the four pillars that capitalism is really built on. And what we're going to do with the rest of this PowerPoint is go through each of those and show you the pros and the cons of each. So the first one is competition. Why is competition good? Well, sellers, people at Walmart, want to make as much money for goods as they can. And consumers want as many goods for as little money as they can. So every time you go to the store, you are competing. And this is getting more and more easy for you to do. The advantage has really swayed to the consumer now with the advent of the internet, because not only can I research ahead of time, but there are apps on phones where I can simply go to the store, swipe a barcode on my phone, and it'll tell me how much it's selling for at Target across the street. So you can always get the best possible deal. If you're willing to wait, it gets even better because you can order so many things online. And some of those stores, the online retailers, have a natural advantage. You'll notice prices are kind of settling in, but that's a benefit to you. So the competition between sellers, Walmart, and you, shopper, helps drive down the cost, and it increases the quality of the product, because you're not going to buy products that are bad. Sellers compete with each other. So Walmart competes with Target. Why is that good? Because they are forced then to lower their prices and increase their quality, at least to a certain point. This is why people will complain about a Walmart coming to town and driving out all other business, because what should naturally happen then is, if there's only Walmart in town and there's no other major stores, the prices should naturally increase because we don't have competition. For many things, this doesn't hold true, though, because durable goods, things that you can ship, things that aren't perishable, so clothes, electronics, stuff like that, you can order online and have it delivered to your house. And so a lot of times those online stores will give free shipping. And so then Walmart is still competing. So we can see technology as a factor of production really plays a role in this. Customers get better goods at lower prices. All right, negatives though. Everything that's good can potentially have something that's bad simply because of different perspective. Well, there's winners and losers. If Walmart comes to town and you are a mom and pop hardware store, it suddenly becomes really hard to make money because your costs are so much higher than Walmart. There's something called the economies of scale, which you'll go into senior year, which deals with the fact that the more you buy, the cheaper it gets. The more you produce, the cheaper each unit gets. And so because of that, a local hardware store that buys 20 hammers a year can't get the same price from the hammer manufacturer as Walmart, who orders 1 million hammers a year. And so they can't sell at the same price Walmart can. Well, what happens then? The mom and pop stores go out of business. Private property, second pillar of capitalism. What's good about it? Hey, You can use your property however you see fit. In other words, if you have land and you want to farm it because you think you can make the most money that way, go ahead. If you have land and you were a farmer and now you want to make a golf course, go ahead. Bad idea. A lot of farmers did that and lost their shirts. You can do whatever you want with their property, and you don't have to worry about what other people say. Again, within reason. Pure capitalism, it's your property, do what you want. It provides an incentive to work. Think about this. We can keep what we earn, and we take care of our property. Take a look at any rental property. Compare a house that somebody is renting with a house that somebody owns, and look at the yard. How do they take care of the yard? Do they manicure it? Is it upkept? Do they keep fresh paint, fresh stain? Or is the yard dying? Are the trees overgrown? When people own stuff, they take better care of it. Easy examples in school. Look at the computers here and how students screw around with and mess with the computers here because they're not worried if it breaks because it's not there. I guarantee if it's your computer, you're going to take a lot more care of it. Think rental cars or apartments. Cons. What's bad about it? It's difficult for the government to do certain things. They wanted to put an airport outside of Hastings. Well, and that made a lot of sense because it's far removed from population centers, so you don't have as much noise pollution. You have built-in infrastructure, and you have plenty of room to expand. The problem is a bunch of farmers and a bunch of landowners outside of Hastings said, we don't want this here. This is our farmland, and they refused to sell. So instead, they kept Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport where it is in Bloomington, and they keep kind of shoehorning it in and building up to try and expand. Highways, roads, those kind of things. It also creates a wealth gap. The more you own, the more wealthy you are, and money multiplies. And we're going to talk about that in the private sector when we deal with the stock market and in the personal finance. One of the most important things you can learn at an early age is how to make your money work for you, how to make your money go to work. A lot of rich people don't make money based on work. They make money based on how much money is working for them. We'll talk about that. So the more you own, the bigger the wealth gap. Third pillar, profit motive. Just break that down. Profit is the money you make after expenses, and motive is what you're trying to do. So the idea of making money motivates people. Well, that's a good thing, isn't it? Because it gives incentives for individuals to take risks. If you're going to start a business, think about every major chain you see around was started by one company. Domino's Pizza, nationwide company, been around since I was a kid. I can't ever remember a time without Domino's. Was started in Michigan with one restaurant. That guy had a huge incentive to take a risk because if he starts a pizza company, he can open more stores. If he makes money, he can expand and become wealthy. And so this gives us an incentive. If you fail, well, you're not destitute for the rest of your life in America. And more importantly, if you succeed, you get to keep the fruits of your labor. It encourages everyone to try and better their standard of living. Bill Gates did not grow up rich. He was not ridiculously wealthy. Neither was Steve Jobs. They weren't poor by any stretch. But we see stories all the time of this rags to riches. Again, as our country evolves, that's one of the big debates. Is America still a land of opportunity? Still a country where we see people that start from nothing that end up fabulously wealthy? I would tend to argue yes, but there's evidence that for some groups it's becoming the exception, not the norm. What's bad about the profit motive? Well, what about greed? If the goal is to make money, if it's material consumerism, aren't we fostering that? Is that something that's truly we should aspire to? Should we really be trying to encourage people to have more, and that's what seeks fulfillment? Lots of scientific psychological studies show that the key to happiness is not wealth. It's comparative wealth and some other things, but that consumerism doesn't lead to true lasting happiness. What about corruption? The key is to make more money, how fast does government succumb to the pressures of money? And we saw a lot of that when we talked about the presidential elections and how much money it costs just to win or to compete. Lastly, a limited state. Again, state is what we're talking about in the definition of a government. So a limited government or a small government. The goods are this: it maximizes liberty. Hey, the smaller the government, flat out, the less they can do, and the more freedom you have. That's just inherent. The smaller the government, the more freedom you have. It assumes, though, that individuals are better off with more freedom. And we do know that with absolutely no government, we have anarchy. If we remember back to Locke and Hobbes and those philosophers we talked about at the beginning of the freshman year, you'll see that, hey, the natural state looks pretty ugly. So there is this balance of freedom versus security. It maximizes growth, or GDP. We assume that the markets are more efficient than the government. We assume that individuals making choices make a more efficient use of the resources than a government would. The bad things. It increases the wealth gap. Without redistribution, we know that money compounds. This is what happened in Europe back pre-colonial America. Actually, even during that time, is that we have families that just keep collecting and pooling wealth. And so after a while, you have children that are inheriting so much wealth that there's no possible way for peasants and serfs and lower class people to work their way up. It increases opportunity for corruption because without government regulation, which really means rules, we don't have anybody watching the government and the corporations to make sure they're not cheating. All right, that's the end of this lecture. Have a good night.